Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 121 of the Ron and Brian podcast. I am Ron, as always, joined by the man smart enough not to agree to 18 recorded conversations with Bob Woodward, Brian. Brian, hello again. Hello again, my friend.
Oh, well, that's lovely. That was truly lovely.
Oh,
Yeah, my record with Woodward is 12 interviews. I find that once you get to the 13th with him, that's when he starts, playing gotcha journalism. That's when he starts using your words against you. That's when he starts saying, "Hold on a second, that's the complete opposite of everything else that you've said on your podcast." And I'm not playing that.
Listen, I'm a little surprised and amazed that
Why?
the busiest president in our lifetime had that amount of free time to just do all these interviews. And it's amazingly impressive how Lindsey Graham is bragging about how he set those interviews up. Like, I don't know that I'd really be like, oh yeah, I set that up with Woodward.
Do you think Graham was trying to nail Trump?
Maybe
Because Woodward had already written unflattering book about Trump 2 years ago.
Well, that's the other thing. He assailed Woodward's book 2 years ago, and then still sits down for 18 on the record interviews.
That's the part that I don't understand. I don't get it. Why on earth would you make that kind of fucking mistake?
Yeah. Well, there's only one thing you can do, Brian. Have a drink.
Drink of the week.
Na zdrowie!
Salud.
Drink of the week. Plunge it.
Drink of the week. Drink of the week.
Brian, I hope you are back to a all this week.
Not only am I in New York, I'm also in New York.
No. I don't even know what that means.
It didn't actually mean anything. I decided to go with a New York brewer. What do I got here? Great South Bay Honey Ale. Well, earlier this week I placed an order with Taproom, TAPRM. Use my code. I don't know what it is. No, that's not true. Come on, let me find my code. Anyway, but they are a great New York City-based beer distributor that if you spend $50, they will deliver same day to your house.
What?
Downside is that they will not necessarily deliver everything you order.
Really? In case they're out of it?
I don't know. I ordered 4 different beers and I got 3 of them. Most importantly, though, is that I did receive my Yankee Pinstripe Pilsner, which I have yet to open, and I may say that for when the Yankees go to the 2020 World Series.
All right.
Cheers to you, Ron.
Cheers. I mean, did you reach out to the good folks at Taproom to let them know that you did not receive all your beers?
I received a full refund before the night was over.
Excellent customer service right there. You got to respect that.
I let them know it. I even said to them, listen, I'm happy with your service. I think what you're doing is great. I don't have the type of offerings in my neighborhood, so it's great that I can order. I absolutely understand that these kind of things happen. I will be ordering again because I have to keep this beer refrigerator full.
You gotta. Otherwise, the more full you keep a refrigerator, the less electricity it costs to run it.
Is that true?
That is true. It's just science, my friend. It's easier for the entire unit to stay cold when you have a fridge full of cold items. When it gets emptier, it gets warmer quicker. That is my little science tip to you today, sir.
And is that why your beer fridge is so full?
I mean, it's because I have a problem, and I keep my fridge way too full. But Brian,
can I ask you a question?
You can.
Ron.
Yes.
What are you drinking?
Well, it is, as you know, my favorite time of the year. It is
pumpkin spice.
Actually, pumpkin spice time, bitches.
Fucking basic bitch.
Halloween is right around the corner. My favorite holiday of the year for obvious reasons.
Goblet.
With that and getting married on Halloween. You don't forget. But yes, I broke out.
Just like 9/11, never forget.
That's right. I broke out a pumpkin beer, a little Southern Tier Pumpkin. They call it pumpkin pie in a bottle. Hold on a second.
That is a lovely color. I will. Oh, look at that.
The best pumpkin beer out there. My opinion.
Take another sip. I want to look. Look at that.
I do also enjoy Dogfish Head Pumpkin Ale, but that's like a 9.8. That really just knocks you out of your shoes.
What is this one coming in at?
It comes in at like around a 6, I want to say.
Okay.
I don't have the bottle up here with me, so I can't. But I know I can put down a few pumpkin and still be upright.
Okay. I just want to make sure we have a good after dark.
And Billy gets it. He understands pumpkin, best pumpkin beer, no question about it. Gotta agree.
Gotta love it.
Gotta agree with him. So that is our drink of the week. Exciting as always. Even more exciting, Brian, since we did miss the pre-show meeting, is when I turn it over to you to find out who exactly is our sponsor this week.
No. Pass.
Really?
I'm not doing it anymore, Ron.
Why?
Not doing it.
Why?
Because okay. I know that you are 51% owner of this podcast. I am only 49.
Right.
As such, I feel that you put a lot of effort into the podcast, and I put some effort into the podcast.
That would be a fair statement.
I'm okay with this. But what bothers me is that I put a lot of effort over these past couple weeks for sponsors. I got Herman Cain, you said no. I got the WWE, you said no. I got UConn football, no. I got the Rob and Ryan podcast, no. I'm tired of being rejected. I can be rejected once, I can be rejected twice, thrice, and quarice. But I will not fall for it anymore. So I've decided not to do a sponsor this week. I want you to realize the big, gaping, goatsy hole that is now existing in this podcast because you crushed my dreams 1 week too many times.
I mean, I will just say I also noticed the hole in the podcast checkbook because none of the payments for any of the sponsors have actually cleared. So. But I understand what you're saying, and I feel your pain. And I guess we just move on then to This Week in Racism.
This
Week
in
Racism.
racism.
Oh, it's another 2-pager this week, Brian.
Oh, no.
Right into it, going out to Lincoln, Nebraska first. A photo went viral this week showing a pickup truck with the statement, fuck the N-words, written on its back window, along with Trump 2020. The internet soon identified the truck as belonging to 21-year-old Austin Cordes of Ohio, Nebraska. Cordes admitted that it was his truck, but claimed that someone had written the message on his truck while it was parked at the Gateway Mall in Lincoln. He claimed he saw other cars in the lot marked up as well. However, a witness claims to have seen Cordes drive into the mall parking lot with the writing on his truck, and Lincoln police say they have no reports of cars being vandalized. Cordes is awaiting trial in Fillmore County District Court on felony charges of operating a large marijuana growing operation.
You don't say.
Possession of a firearm while manufacturing marijuana, and being in possession of a firearm while committing a felony. He said it's possible that someone may have been trying to add to his legal troubles. Quote, I don't know, but I don't even vote, he said. I'm not a racist. All lives matter. Just let that hang there in the air for a minute.
It feels like there's a couple jumps in logic, and then there's absolutely no logic.
Yes, no doubt. Garden Grove, California, an Asian American man captured his interaction with an elderly neighbor after she entered his garage to complain about his children's sidewalk chalk art, calling him a son of a bitch and repeatedly referring to his, quote, slanted eyes. Xiao Huan asked the woman's husband repeatedly to remove her from his property after she started hitting his car with her hand and then kicked over a fan in his garage. Pawan decided against reporting this to the police and instead posted it on his Facebook page and asked his friends to share it to spread awareness. Garden Grove made the news earlier this year when 2 high school students videotaped themselves mocking Asian American students, shouting coronavirus during a school cultural assembly, and harassing Vietnamese American classmates.
Yeah, we've all done that a couple times.
Racists they're raising out there in Garden Grove. Going to Wisconsin, Wauwatosa, I think it's pronounced. Police are investigating anonymous letters containing racist language that were mailed to a number of residents. A week prior to the letters, some residents had put out yard signs stating "for sale unless politicians keep Tosa safe," and change their house lights to blue, to which some are claiming is a racist dog whistle against the Black Lives Matter movement. The letter stated support for the blue lights and read, quote, "We whites must stand together. We must keep Wauwatosa free from blacks and their lack of morals. We must keep blacks from destroying our properties, raping our wives and daughters, and recruiting our children into street gangs. We must keep Wauwatosa great. Together we can keep Wauwatosa white, safe, stay vigilant. Whites for Wauwatosa." No one has come forward to claim responsibility for the letters.
No acknowledgement of the irony that you're living in a town called Wauwatosa, which is a Native American word.
The irony is lost on them, I guess. Minneapolis, Minnesota, a white woman harassed her black seatmate on a recent Delta flight from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C. Demetria Poe was flying to D.C. to attend last week's commitment march when the white woman sitting next to her swapped out her American flag mask for a Blue Lives Matter mask. Came very prepared for that flight. The woman also told Poe about her support of police officers and blamed the death of George Floyd on drug use. Upon arrival in D.C., flight attendants informed Poe that the white woman would be banned from future Delta flights. When she arrived for her return flight, Poe found that her seat had been upgraded and Delta gave her a small gift bag. Jumping out to the East Coast, Clifton, New Jersey, a knife and blade sharpening store has come under fire for a sign it hung in its window stating, "Speak English or pay $10 extra." Store owner Dave Feinberg, who pretty much looks like how you would expect him to look, said he had put the sign up out of frustration after dealing with a customer that, quote, "made no attempt to speak English." He said the reason for the $10 was because the man took up an extra 10 minutes of his time and now admits it was a mistake to suggest that he would charge extra. Quote, "I should have said nothing else other than just speak English or make an attempt to speak English."
And this was where?
Clifton, New Jersey. The store has been inundated with angry phone calls and 1-star Yelp reviews. Staying up in your neck of the woods, Brian, in Dobbs Ferry, New York. Police are investigating who left racist T-shirts outside the homes of black families. The shirts say, "Welcome to Dobbs Ferry" on the front, but the back contains a rant that says, "Please respect it. You came from there because you didn't like it there, and now you want to change here to be like there. We are not racist, phobic, or anti-whatever you are. We simply like it here the way it is, and many of us were actually born here and stayed because it's not like there. You are welcome here with open arms, but please stop trying to make here like there. And if you want here to be like there, you should not have left there to come here." It's a lot.
Wow.
At least 3 black families had the shirts left outside their homes. This particular racist rant on the shirt has made the rounds on social media since 2019.
What font did they use on the shirt? I mean, like, that's a lot of verbiage.
It was a very packed back of the shirt. I think they used a little Calibri. Going out to
Calibri
Dearborn,
9?
Yes. Dearborn, Michigan. The University of Michigan Dearborn is issuing an apology after arranging a non-persons of color virtual meetup for its students. The university's Center for Social Justice and Inclusion hosted a Zoom session called a non-POC cafe for students who don't identify as a person of color, while at the same time hosted a virtual cafe for Black, Indigenous, and POC students from marginalized communities. While the university claims it meant well, they understand how it came across a little segregation-y.
You think?
A little bit. And then lastly, Manchester, New Hampshire. We've kind of talked about this with police getting caught doing racist things and arbitration and things like that. Manchester Police Chief Carlo Capano is refusing an arbitrator's order to reinstate a police officer that had been fired for sending racist text messages. In 2018, Officer Aaron Brown was investigated after a complaint was filed describing the messages and also accusing him of intentionally damaging property while executing search warrants. While there was not enough evidence to charge him with property damage, he was fired for the text messages. The Patrolman Association filed a grievance over his firing, and an arbitrator recently ruled that he should have only been given a 30-day suspension. The ruling calls for Brown to be rehired and given all back pay minus the 30 days. Chief Capano's decision has been supported by Manchester Mayor Joyce Craig, while the police union has filed an unfair labor charge. I don't have copies of the text messages. I know that's usually your question.
Probably better off. We're probably better off.
So that's This Week in Racism for this week. Now we are going to bring on this week's guest. We are very happy to have on with us Al Martin, owner of the Broadway Comedy Club and Greenwich Village Comedy Club. Al's name is synonymous with comedy in New York City and is responsible for launching the careers of many top comedians working today. An accomplished comedian himself, Al was a national headliner with numerous television credits such as The Joan Rivers Show, Geraldo, and Evening at the Improv. Also serving as vice president of the Professional Comedians Association, and was instrumental in the organization dedicated to bringing health insurance and improving working conditions for comics. Been around, I think it says, about 30 years. The king of New York comedy. He says, let's welcome to the show, Al Martin. Al, welcome.
Thank you. And now a new credit, the Ron and Brian podcast.
Exactly.
Yes.
You can add this to your resume without a doubt.
Absolutely. How are you guys?
Good. How are we
All right.
holding up during the pandemic?
Right. I'm waiting to get back to work. I'm unemployed myself.
I know that feeling. Brian, I don't think you've reminded everybody yet this week that I do not have a job. You've got.
I have not. I was actually going to save that for the last 10 minutes. I was going to sneak in that, Ron, you don't have a job. But now is not really the right time. Now we're trying to put a smile on people's face. Al, how would you describe the state of the comedy world in 2020 right now?
Well, right now, guys, it's like suspended animation. You know, a lot of Band-Aids are being applied. Comics are trying these Zoom shows. Some people are trying to do the outdoor comedy thing, drive-throughs, restaurants that have tents. Now, that's gotten a little complicated because, at least here in New Jersey and soon in New York, September 30th now, they've been cleared for indoor dining at a reduced capacity. So a lot of these venues that had space to do these outdoor comedy shows now need their parking lots for customers that are coming in. So that's now squeezing the outdoor option in a lot of places. And, by the time these promoters find a new place to do it, the window on outdoor anything in the New York City tri-state area is closing,
Shrinking,
for other considerations. So we have not been given the clearance to open yet. We're sort of one phase behind restaurants, and I find it kind of bizarre because really the difference between us and a restaurant is one person standing on a stage telling jokes. So if you can figure out the remediation for that, which a lot of clubs have already started installing plexiglass around the stages and stuff like that, you sort of have that covered. But right now the governor and the mayor have not given any idea to us when what they call our category low-risk entertainment, when we get to go ahead to open up.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. I mean, I can go to a restaurant and I can have a waiter or waitress come to my table, obviously he or she is wearing a mask, but I can't go to a comedy club and sit at a table where a comedian might be on stage 15, 20, 30 feet away.
Exactly.
It doesn't seem to make sense.
And usually now a lot of clubs are making provisions to have a minimum amount of space, like 12 feet from any customer to the stage. And a lot of places are trying to provide, like I said, plexiglass or protection such as that. And there's already protocols in place to deal with the mics, because that's another issue. The microphones that a comic uses, now they're talking into a microphone, and definitely air particles are coming out while they're talking. So, we have protocols where, it's going to be sort of tag you're it. When the comic on stage comes off, he takes that microphone to the back, that gets disinfected, and the next comic comes up with a newly disinfected microphone to put into place. So, it's just frustrating that it's now 6 months that this has been going on. And I could understand if New York was in a real bad state, but really the only clusters you're seeing in New York are those in college campuses where kids are, hanging out. Just the other day in Washington Square Park, where NYU is located, there were hundreds of kids hanging out in the park. They had photos of them without masks on.
And the cops did nothing. The cops were outside of the park and made no effort to shut that down.
Exactly. And so that's going on. And they're not at 25% capacity. My Greenwich Village Comedy Club is going to open up to 15 customers, and my Broadway Comedy Club is going to open up to 40. So I can't imagine that's much more unsafe than a restaurant that's been open in Nassau County or Westchester County for indoor dining for 2 months, and there's been no spike in New York numbers. It's not. I think the restaurant owners are going to be very careful because they're licensed, and they saw the enforcement when there was a crazy bar situation in Astoria. Licenses were getting yanked, and rightfully so. I mean, the behavior there was horrible.
Right.
I mean, we just want to be given the opportunity to show that we're good citizens, and we've done. I have 2 clubs stocked with sanitizing stations, signage, plexiglass, sanitizing dispensers, but we just don't get a clue as to when we're going to be able to reopen.
Al, even if you could open right now, I mean, with 15 paying customers, does that even come close to covering your rent for a Manhattan nightclub?
Well, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a challenge. Our landlords have been very good with us and have worked with us and continue to, because they're in a very tough spot. You've got landlords now in New York City. I think you're aware of the fact that the vacancy rate for apartments in New York hit an all-time high today of like 15,000 vacant apartments in Manhattan. So on the residential side, people are getting out. On the commercial side, restaurants just can't afford. A lot of them are going belly up. I think that's why the governor finally decided to open. It was really getting very grim. There's a bill, a little-known bill that was passed in the New York City Council that stated that the deadline is September 30th. If restaurants want to get out of their lease that they've signed for partially on a personal basis or entirely on a personal basis. Now, think about that. If you've got a 10-year lease and you're only in your 3rd year, you're responsible personally for a big portion of that lease unless you have what's called a good guy clause, not to get too technical, but that gives you a certain amount of protection that if you return the space in a good condition where the landlord can rent it, you might only be responsible for 3 to 6 months rent. But this bill passed.
It's a sizable amount of money.
Huh?
That's a sizable amount of money, and even in the best of circumstances.
Yeah, especially for a mom and pop. So what this law provides for is if a restaurateur or a club owner hands their keys back to the landlord by September 30th, they're absolved of any personal guarantee. So you might see by the deadline, a lot of these restaurants just saying, you know what? Here's the keys. I don't want to be personally responsible. When the dust settles, there's going to be a lot of real estate in New York, probably left by other people. I'll just go in and operate that, And that's starting to be the mental condition of a lot of these restaurateurs.
Now, is it your goal to stick with it past September 30th, or are you weighing your options before the end of the month?
Well, I always like to keep all options on the table, because you never know what the changing conditions are on the ground. But I feel like if the restaurants are going to be opening, my fear is that I don't want to be in none of the comedy clubs or cabaret spaces where they do musical shows, small musical shows. These are 75-seat venues. We don't want to be lumped in with, entertainment like Broadway theaters or bars that, people hang out and chat with each other face to face, or strip clubs. It's an entirely different thing. So, I don't want us to be lumped in that category. So I'm hoping, and we've had conversations with the governor's office and some local assembly people, telling them our concerns and what our protocols would be. So we're kind of hoping that we're in the pipeline, and now that indoor dining is open, will be next. But the funny thing is, you wait so long, and there could be a second wave of this thing, and we never get a chance to open, and then everything
Right.
starts getting closed again. So that becomes an issue then, and we'll just have to see what happens. But yeah, my plan is to try to wait this out and try to reopen again. I'm at the age now where myself personally, it doesn't really matter. I'm if I have to go, I go, and but I was more hoping to hang on and keep this thing going for my children, who 2 of them are employed by me, and 1 in each club. So that's my biggest concern.
So now,
And my
we've
employees,
go ahead.
and my employees who've been with me for many, many years. I've got some people with me almost from the beginning, 25, 30 years, and others with me 10 or 15 years. So this is a big concern.
Definitely. Now we've seen other clubs in New York that have kind of gone the Zoom route and online shows and things like that. Was that something that you considered, or was it something that didn't appeal to you?
We tried it. My gut feeling was that it would not really work, because stand-up comedy is something that really needs that audience feedback,
Right.
and you, as a comic on stage, you need to know when the audience is laughing and when they've stopped laughing, so you can begin your next, bit and your next setup. Now, I also operate 53 above cabaret space for singers, and we've started contemplating, and we're thinking about doing a Zoom show for cabaret. And I think there will be a market once this is all done and the comedy clubs reopen for Zoom type things in conjunction with the live product. I'll give you an example. There might be comedians, especially in what we call our new talent showcases, where people, New York is a transplant city for a lot of people. They come from all over the country, maybe not now as much, but they have come from all over and settle in New York and try to, hit the big city and try to make a life. So when they do the new talent show, not only do they invite people down who they know and their friends, but they might have a lot of friends back home that can't get to see them do stand-up. So if we integrate the live experience with some kind of streaming, it might work,
Mhm.
but I don't really believe without an audience in the room that the comic is going to feel comfortable on stage, doing it. Is it a Band-Aid now for comics to get on? There are all sorts of Band-Aids. Comics in the park doing comedy, which is sort of illegal because New York City doesn't permit, doing a comedy show in their parks. There's one club that is doing 10 shows.
Doing like 4 shows a day, and they keep getting shut down in one of the locations. They keep trying it out in Battery Park City, and they get shut down regularly.
Yeah, they keep doing a show, and then they actually had the nerve to try to sell alcohol at one of these shows. So,
No.
and we really believe, a lot of the club owners, or not this particular club, that it's that kind of activity that is making the governmental officials very angry at all of us, and we're not
Right.
all doing that, So a lot of us have been good players. We're quietly sitting here waiting our turn to get the numbers down, and they have been for at least a month or 2 in New York, And I pointed this out on my Facebook page a couple of days ago. What's bizarre is I went to dinner in and met a couple of friends in Long Island, Nassau County, and this location happened to be right on the border of Queens. So as we were driving to the restaurant, all the Queens restaurants had outdoor dining, and then you drive like 2 or 3 blocks away into Nassau County, and they have the ability to do indoor dining.
Right.
So this particular evening, the weather forecast was calling for rain. So, I mean, like, are you going to go to the outdoor thing, or are you going to drive 4 blocks away and go for indoor dining? And the same thing is happening in Bronx restaurants and Westchester, you know?
Yeah. I think once New Jersey announced that they were doing indoor dining with the 25%, I think it just, at that point, it just became literally inevitable for New York City to open up indoor dining, because at that point, anybody in the boroughs was no more than 20 minutes away from indoor dining, and they were gonna travel there, and if they were to catch this deadly of plagues, they would just bring it back into the city.
Yeah, I think that the time was here to open the indoor dining. And, you know, the constant worry of the governor was that, you know, talking about air filtration and the air conditioners. Well, I mean, what are the air conditioners different in Nassau County and in Westchester County? I mean, you know, after a while, this argument did not make sense, especially since the indoor dining has been open in Nassau and in Westchester, Yonkers, you know, all those areas for like a month and a half already, and there's been no, you know, I get the numbers every day from New York. Yesterday, 7 people passed away from COVID in all of New York State. It's been averaging anywhere from 1 to 10 people a day. Okay, we don't want to lose anybody, I get that. But when you think about the economic loss for not opening up for 10 people, if you're not going to open up now, when are you going to open? You know, I mean, you're down to
as good a time as any to try and bring things back.
You got to try. You know, because you know, New York is getting to a point where there's going to be a financial apocalypse. I mean,
there already is.
Yeah,
the office worker, the office environment has abandoned New York City for the time being, which means that all the secondary businesses, the places people get lunch, the Dwayne Reed's, absolutely, they have no business anymore. My question to you, Al, is this: is New York dead?
Well, one of my colleagues from another comedy club wrote an article, which I'm sure you heard of, and Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld refuted it. My feeling is, if the attitude of the government now in New York continues the way it has been, yes, New York is dead. Can New York come back? Absolutely. I mean, you know, you start opening up portions of the economy. Like, you see, if you ask me, I would say colleges maybe should be done remotely for now, because the young people going to college, many of them have proven not to be good players in all of this. They feel invincible to the virus. Many of them are, but the problem is they bring it home. They interact with their moms, their dads, their brothers, their sisters, their grandparents, and before you know it, you can have a major mess. And they're finding in New York that the clusters, they found one upstate, I think in Western New York, Oneonta, and then they're going to find one here in NYU. I think the results will come out shortly, and that's what the real problem is. It's not, you know, 30 people gathered in a comedy club socially distant with, you know, the waiters and wait staff wearing masks and everybody sanitized until their skin falls off. You know, I think that's where the issues are.
All right. Well, we definitely appreciate you joining us. We wish you the best for the future, in the hopes that things come back. If people do want to get updated info on your clubs for when they open, what's the best way for them to follow you?
Well, there's www.broadwaycomedyclub.com, www.greenwichvillage.com, and I took the time during the pandemic to write a great book on my 30 years in stand-up comedy.
Plug away.
Okay. It's called Did It on a Dare, How I Built a Comedy Empire in 30 Short Years. It's available right now on Amazon. Pay paperback, Kindle, iPhone, iTunes. It's available on audio, and I'll be
great.
As soon as these stores open now. I'll be hitting some bookstores for signings, and
Great.
You know.
All right, sounds good. Well, again, we wish you the best. Stay safe, and much success in the future.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Al.
Have a great day.
All right, you
Bye.
too.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's rough.
It
It's
is.
rough to be an entrepreneur in an industry where you're not allowed to practice.
It is, and I didn't realize.
It's got to be similar to somebody who works in the hospitality industry,
Yeah,
who handles group sales during a time where there are no group sales.
Groups. Yep. It is interesting. I don't get the logic of treating a comedy club separately from a restaurant.
There's no. I can go to the gym. And this is the problem at this point if we still want to call it a lockdown, it's just that that none of these rules make sense anymore.
Yeah.
I can go to a gym, work out on a cardio machine where I'm exhaling heavily, but I can't sit in an indoor room wearing a mask listening to a joke.
And I think I agree with them. We've definitely seen some industries that I think will probably change moving forward because of this pandemic. But I don't see comedy clubs being one of those, because you and I have a while back used to do almost weekly go to like a Zoom comedy show. And
in the beginning of the lockdown,
And to his point, the comics have a very difficult time because they're waiting for reactions. And and because of delays in internet or whatnot, it's just some did it much better than others, but there were a lot of comics that definitely struggled in that Zoom environment.
Yes, and I what I've seen, at least in the New York area, is that there really does seem to be this kind of move to an outdoor space. But like Al mentioned earlier, is you're looking at a shortened window. You're literally looking at a couple weeks at this point before it gets too cold to sit outside.
And I think as far as bringing in like big numbers and big dollar amounts, it's limited the comics that can do that. Like we had Jim Gaffigan here in Philadelphia, who did a show down at Citizens Bank Park at the Phillies ball field in their parking lot. And depending on where your car parked, it was $240 to be close, $160 a little further away. But you could have you could have up to 4 people in a car. So when you break it down per person, it's not. But again, if you're just 2 people, it makes it a little outrageous. But he actually got decent attendance down there.
Right. Well,
but again,
we are starved for entertainment right now. We are starved for entertainment. So if you can go to a comedy club and sit in your car, if you go to a comedy show, I think you'll have a lot of people doing it.
Brian, how can you say that people are starved for entertainment when the Ron and Brian podcast exists?
Because we do 1 hour a week.
Oh, right.
That is not enough for.
Not enough. And if it's not enough for you, you know what you can do. Join the Patreon at ronandbrianpodcast.com. That'll give you access to the additional content.
Yes.
To our After Dark at 9:30 live every Thursday. And as always, available exclusively on patreon.com. So go to ronandbrianpodcast.com. Upper right-hand corner, click on Become a Patron. Brian, let's keep things moving along. I think it might be time for Beef of the Week.
Ron and Brian's Beef of the Week.
So Brian, I think we. This is a little rough. Rorty out there says he's watching us now and he's starved for entertainment. Ooh. A little bit cold, but we respect the roast without a doubt.
Absolutely, no, you got to do it. Bring it on.
Yeah. So both of our beefs this week, not surprisingly, stem from Donald Trump and the recent revelation from the Woodward interviews that he was aware of how serious the coronavirus was way back in February and downplayed it. It's very frustrating when, again, Brian, I believe you live in an area that saw forklifts, refrigerated trucks high number of fatalities. We're pushing 200,000.
I was sickened. I was sickened by this disease that my government told me was under control. That my government told me I was at no risk of catching, and yet, during the second half of March, first half of April 2020, I was struck by the coronavirus, by the SARS-CoV-19
Which is
novel.
What? A setback is a setup for a comeback, and that's how you handled it.
Antibodies flowing through this.
So what we want to do right now, and settle in, get yourself a beverage, have a snack.
If your buddy over there was looking for entertainment, I don't know that he's about to get it, because this is going to be a depressing hit with a soggy cold noodle.
We're going to throw some knowledge your way.
But we'll also make it entertaining. Who am I kidding? We're going to make it entertaining.
So this is a timeline of the coronavirus pandemic and the U.S. response. This is done by a group called Just Security. They're an online forum for analysis of U.S. national security law and policy, based out of the Reese Center of Law and Security at NYU School of Law. And I think one of the main things, one of the main misunderstandings, or one of the main pieces of knowledge that people don't realize is, the failure in this pandemic is not just happening in this year or in this last 6 to 8 months. This is something that's been brewing within this
January of 17
since they took over.
Yes.
So we go back to January 13th, 2017. The joint Obama-Trump transition teams run an exercise on pandemic preparedness to give credit to the stability of the Trump administration. Out of the 30 Trump team members that were in attendance of that exercise, 21 of them are no longer with the administration. Brian, you're an HR guy. What would you say about a company that has a 70% turnover rate in a few years?
I would say that it's probably not a great organization. It has lost all institutional knowledge in terms of how things are supposed to be done. There's a complete lack of teamwork because people are not used to working with each other. And ultimately, it will probably continue to struggle.
All right. So right away, in his administration, Trump goes after pandemic preparedness. Between March and May of 2017, he proposes cutting over $277 million in pandemic preparedness funding. Thankfully, Congress, in a bipartisan effort at that time, rejected those cuts.
But keep in mind, in his defense, this wasn't the only area where he was looking to cut.
No, he was just looking to slash budgets across the board.
He needed money to build his wall because immigrants from South America. What? I should shut up.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, you make a good point, but we do get there where money is diverted from pandemic to some of his pet project. In spring of 2017, the Trump administration stops working on an Obama-era OSHA regulation designed to prepare healthcare centers to combat airborne infectious diseases. Seems like that would have been important too. And then back in May 11th, 2017, the intelligence community's worldwide threat assessment warns of pandemic risks. This will be a theme that we will come back to every now and then.
You think?
I think so. Now, on the plus side, September 2017, the Trump administration contracts with Applied Research Associates to create a prototype of a reusable N95 mask, one that doesn't have to be thrown away after each use. The development phase is 15 months, which is eventually extended. Still don't have the prototype in hand.
Ooh. Not even a prototype.
Not even a prototype.
That means one. That means that they have yet to make one that...
I won't even tell you how much money we've spent on that prototype that's yet to be put together.
Couple $100,000?
Yeah, maybe a little bit more. Maybe a few mil. All right, now we jump into 2018, February 9th to be exact. Trump signs a bill that cuts $1.35 billion in funding for the Prevention and Public Health Fund at the CDC.
Now, this is with, obviously, Congress's authorization. They're the ones that put that bill in front of them.
They were able, yes. I mean, he is not alone in this.
Not alone in this.
he does. The Democrats don't fight this particular bill, and he signs off on it.
Okay.
February 13th, 2018, the intelligence community's worldwide threat assessment again warns of pandemic risks. Again, we're going to hear that a bit. So on May 7th, 2018, the White House proposes cutting the global health budget on the same day that the National Security Council's Director of Medical and Biodefense Preparedness warns that a pandemic flu is the top health safety concern in the United States, and the country is not prepared for it.
Teachable moment, Ron. That's a teachable moment.
Teachable moment. That was May 7th. May
Teachable
8th,
moment.
next day, remember, May 7th, we're being told we're not prepared for a pandemic. May 8th, on the orders of John Bolton, the National Security Council removes the top official responsible for pandemic response and disbands the global health security team.
Didn't Trump say that he had nothing to do with that?
Well, I guess technically because he gave the order to John Bolton, who then executed it. So,
Got it. Okay.
He's truthful in that. A week later, two members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee write to John Bolton to express their concern about the potential impact to global health security. Obviously, nothing happens. Brian, you'll like this one. September 2018.
Hold on. If I can just hit rewind on that last point.
Sure.
Having read John Bolton's book, what he claims is that these were not firings with the intent of chopping off at the kneecaps our nation's ability to be prepared for a pandemic. He said that these were part of routine reorganizations to increase efficiencies.
And I, again, with all due respect to Mr. Bolton, who is
why show that mustachioed fuck any level of respect? He's unworthy of it.
The person who was let go had initially been brought on during the Clinton administration and had actually been in government since the Bush administration, was widely respected on both sides of the aisle. I don't know that was necessarily that routine. But then we jump to September 2018. The Department of Health and Human Services diverts funding from the CDC to pay for housing for detained immigrant children.
Oh no!
You get twofer there. You get kids separated from their families and money taken away from the CDC.
Someone's got to pay Wayfair. Somebody's got to pay Wayfair for all of those beds and whatnot.
Understood. Also in September 2018, the Trump administration fails to follow through with an Obama-era project designed to protect against medical supply shortage during pandemics. A medical manufacturer was to create a machine that could produce 1.5 million masks per day. The Trump administration paid millions to the company, but does not follow through with the making of the machine.
What? Run that by me again?
We spent millions of dollars on a machine that was never built to make a bunch of N95 masks for first responders. All right, going back to the old standard, January 29th, 2019, the intelligence community's worldwide threat assessment warns that the U.S. is now vulnerable to a global pandemic. So we had a one-year warning. In April 2019, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, says what keeps everyone in the biodefense world up at night is the threat of a pandemic flu. I would just like to qualify, yes, coronavirus is not the flu, but it is transmitted very similarly to a pandemic flu, so that's why this is kind of all relevant. You with me so far?
Says you.
Says me.
No, I'm starting to get depressed. I'm genuinely starting to get depressed. And we haven't even had one instance of coronavirus so far, and I'm already depressed.
But here's a plus. Here's a plus for you. June 24th, 2019, Congress passes and Trump signs a bipartisan bill designed to reauthorize prior pandemic response programs and enhance pandemic preparedness.
Woo! We are secure.
This is first signed by George W. Bush in 2006 and has been reapproved by every administration every 5 years.
Okay.
Now, July 2019, the Trump administration eliminates a public health position designed to detect disease outbreaks in China. But I will say this, experts differ as to whether this would have impacted the results of the coronavirus or not.
Okay.
However, this definitely had an impact, as those of you in New York City found. The end of summer 2019, Department of Health and Human Services discontinues a maintenance contract for over 2,100 ventilators in the federal government's emergency supply. This contract was not renewed until mid-January of 2020, and most were not operational when needed in April, primarily in New York City. You're taking that one a little personally, I think.
That one hurts. That one hurts a bit.
September 2019, the President's Council of Economic Advisors warned that an influenza pandemic may cause tremendous health and economic losses. How right they were.
Reasonable?
A year later, we're finding out how exactly right they were. October 2019, the Trump administration concludes a month-long simulation codenamed Crimson Contagion, designed to respond to a global influenza pandemic. The Department of Health and Human Services determines that the U.S. is underprepared, underfunded, and undercoordinated to fight an influenza-like pandemic.
But we have a great leader who is going to make sure that we are secure.
Yes. Also, in October of 2019, the Trump administration cuts funding for a government research program designed to recognize animal viruses that could infect humans and prevent pandemics. You know, like from a bat, for example.
Allegedly.
And then also that month, Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security publishes a study that ranks the U.S. as the most prepared country in the world to face an epidemic or pandemic, but warns that international preparedness is weak and that no country is fully prepared. It also notes that while U.S. ranks first in 5 categories, it ranks 19th in overall risk environment and vulnerability to biological threats.
So what you're saying is we're number 19.
Yes, we should cheer that.
We're number 19. We're number 19.
All right, Brian, we got to the part you wanted. COVID, November 17th, 2019. First possible case of COVID-19 emerges in Hubei province, China. Late November or December 2019, U.S. intelligence agencies warn of a cataclysmic and out-of-control disease in Wuhan, China. Mid to late December 19, a team of government public servants in Alberta, Canada, responds to reports of an influenza-like virus in China by increasing their emergency stockpile of hospital masks, gloves, and gowns. So now we have Canada.
That's the go-to. That's the go-to move. I'm sure we were right there, same day order, right?
Not quite. So in January and February of 2020, U.S. intelligence agencies issue over 12 detailed warnings about the threat of the virus in the president's daily brief and issue classified reports about the virus. Senior U.S. officials begin to form a task force. In early January, Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Pottinger receives a call from a friend who was a Hong Kong epidemiologist who informs him of a ferocious outbreak of a new virus that has spread far more quickly than the Chinese government is admitting. The epidemiologist also explains that the virus is spread by asymptomatic individuals. In ensuing days, Pottinger had held the view that the coronavirus problem was far worse than China was letting on to. Senior U.S. officials, including your favorites, CDC Director Robert Redfield, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar, and Dr. Anthony Fauci form a...
You know what? With the exception of Fauci, fuck those guys. Redfield owes me $30 from a poker game back in 1993. The dude cheated me. He never paid that debt off.
So anyway, they form a task force dedicated to dealing with the virus. A U.S. official with access to classified briefings told the Washington Post, quote, Donald Trump may not have been expecting this, but a lot of other people in the government were. They just couldn't get him to do anything about it. The system was blinking red. Let's see, January 3rd, 2020, Chinese colleagues alert the CDC director about the virus, and he alerts Secretary Azar. Sometime later in the month of January, FDA Chief Stephen Hahn asks Health and Human Services if he can start contacting companies about possible shortages of personal protective equipment and other equipment. HHS tells him no. That decision.
No, why would they say no? I mean, it makes perfect sense.
So the decision caused weeks of delay. Wall Street Journal reports, quote, Secretary Azar told associates such calls would alarm the industry and make the administration look unprepared.
Oh, So if somebody were to raise their hand and say, "Hey, I think we're unprepared here," his answer is, "Well, let's guarantee we're going to be unprepared."
Yes. Mid-January, HHS employees begin drafting contingency plans for enforcing the Defense Production Act to compel private companies to produce critical supplies, but does not enact it. Around the third week of January, U.S. diplomats in Wuhan returned to the United States on chartered planes. They urgently alert the State Department that the public health risk in the region is significant. So on January 18th, 2020, Alex Azar, for the first time, tries to speak to President Trump about the outbreak. President Trump ignores the warning, instead asking to discuss vaping and whether flavored vaping products would return to the market.
They're going to be huge vaping products.
2 days later, on January 20th, the United States and South Korea each announced their first case of COVID-19.
We got the COVID, yeah. We got
January
the COVID,
22nd,
yeah.
China closes off the city of Wuhan. President Trump states that the United States has the pandemic, quote, totally under control, and that he trusts China. When asked in a CNBC interview whether he is worried about the pandemic, Trump states, "No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control. It's one person coming in for China."
Yep. One person.
January 25th, Dr. Rick Bright, director of HHS's Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, warns others in the administration that there is a need for procuring surgical masks. Again, a little foreshadowing there. January 27th, President's Coronavirus Task Force finally begins daily meetings. January 28th, this is a major date in the timeline. At a top secret intelligence briefing, senior officials inform President Trump that the coronavirus will be the biggest national security threat of his presidency.
What?
In a May 6th interview with Bob Woodward, Trump appears to say that he doesn't recall the warning. Woodward asks, "Do you remember that?" The president responds, No, I don't. No, I don't. I'm sure if he said it, I'm sure he said it. Not even sure what that is. So he is told on the 28th of January this will be the biggest national security threat of his presidency, but on January 30th states that the U.S. has the virus, quote, under control and hosts a campaign rally in Iowa. Makes sense. Early February.
Well, I mean, when there's a virus going around that's spreading from person to person, you definitely want to do mass gatherings. Yes.
Early February. White House officials call for a more forceful response to the novel coronavirus, but Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin resists. And why does he do that, Brian?
Because, let me guess, he is our Treasury Secretary, so he would be in control of all things economic. His daughter is looking at going on vacation to Europe, and he does not want to make any type of public proclamations that may hinder her ability to travel overseas.
Now, he resists due to economic concerns about the stock market. And in early February, officials start voicing concerns about our testing capacity. Now, February 7th, this is another big day. The CDC sends public health laboratories contaminated and malfunctioning coronavirus test kits. I
remember this.
Nearly 100 public health laboratories cannot use the test kits to test for the virus. Dr. Rick Bright, again, the program leader at the HHS, insists the federal government increase N95 production for healthcare workers and first responders. HHS supply chain officials respond, stating that there is, quote, no indication of supply chain shortages or issues with masks. We found that not to be the case. Also, February 7th, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announces that the United States donated nearly 18 tons of medical supplies to China, while we were not producing medical supplies for our own people. And also, on February 7th, President Trump admits his knowledge about airborne transmission and the significant dangers of coronavirus in an interview with Bob Woodward.
Yeah, pretty much.
He acknowledges this on February 7th, but between February 10th and March 2nd, he holds 5 rallies across the United States, each attracting thousands of attendees in confined spaces. Mid-February, that's where the coronavirus began to spread in your neck of the woods, Brian, in New York from Europe. But
I don't know if you remember this, Ron, but at its peak, coronavirus was killing over 1,000 New Yorkers a day. The morgues were overflowing with bodies.
I recall that.
Literally, there were pitchforks, no, forklifts.
Forklifts.
There were forklifts carrying body bags, filled body bags, out of hospitals into refrigerated trucks that were parked outside of Elmhurst Hospital. Literally 2 subway stops away from me. Literally.
February 19th, Trump assures the public against worrying about the coronavirus. Trump states, I think it's going to work out fine. I think when we get to April in the warmer weather, that has a very negative effect on that and that type of virus.
February shit lying scumbag.
February 24th, Trump gives false assurance that the stock market is starting to look very good and that the coronavirus is very much under control. Stock markets declined sharply following news of the spread of the coronavirus.
Yep.
On February 25th, the next day, the U.S. Army's National Center for Medical Intelligence raises the warning level that is likely an imminent COVID-19 will become a pandemic. A CDC director says that community spread in the United States is inevitable, and Americans should prepare for a severe disruption of everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on February 26th, President Trump falsely assures the public that the number of cases will go down. But at the same time, on the same day, Defense Secretary Mark T. Esper informs overseas American military commanders that they should check in and provide advance notice before making decisions on how to protect their military personnel from the virus.
Well, that's reasonable.
Yeah. February 27th, HHS Secretary Alex Azar tells lawmakers that it's unlikely that large numbers of Americans will need to be hospitalized. But on the same day, Senator Richard Burr informs a private luncheon that the coronavirus is, quote, much more aggressive than the United States has seen in recent history and is probably more akin to the 1918 pandemic. President Trump,
that sounds ominous.
Yes. President Trump privately complains that a senior CDC's official's public warning is scaring the stock markets and threatens to fire her. He publicly remarked that the number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. should be close to zero in a couple of days. That was February 27th. February 28th, he also says President Trump the virus is like a miracle. It's going to disappear. And on that day, a senior medical advisor at the VA said that the United States has a narrow window to implement non-pharmaceutical interventions, such as social distancing, that would have any significant impact.
And I'm sure that we took advantage of that window, right?
Of course. Sometime in March, White House internal planning document commits about 1/3 of the nation's emergency stockpile of medical equipment to Jared Kushner's plan for drive-through testing sites. Kushner originally promised thousands of testing sites. Brian, would you like to guess how many materialized?
I'm going to say thousands. I mean, Jared Kushner, he is a man of his word. He is a man that makes things happen. I mean, he has a, if you look at his resume, he has an extensive history of dealing with, infectious diseases throughout the globe.
I'm going to have to break your heart because only 78 testing sites materialized.
But he said thousands, correct?
Good. He was wrong. He was very.
Are you implying Jared Kushner was not honest with the American people?
Might be a little bit.
But I don't understand.
He's
married to Ivana.
Yes. March 2nd, President Trump claims that a vaccine will be readily available. Obviously not true. March 6th, President Trump
still not available.
Claims that any American who wants a COVID-19 test can get a test. Was not truthful at that time.
Sure.
On March 13th, Trump declares a national emergency and promises a new website to link Americans to testing sites. That was also the day where he famously stated, I don't take any responsibility at all, in a response to a question about the lack of available tests. But remember how he now announced that day that Google was building that new website?
Of course. They were going to build a website.
And it was news to Google?
Yes. Just like he was going to throw the first ball out at Yankee Stadium.
March 18th, President Trump signs an executive order allowing for use of the Defense Production Act, but both he and Mike Pence make statements suggesting the administration will not use the act. March 19th, another date that has just popped up because that's the date that President Trump admitted to Bob Woodward that he has been publicly downplaying the dangers of the virus. On March 29th, he falsely claims that he inherited obsolete and broken tests from the Obama administration for a virus that just appeared in 2019. April 3rd, he states that the virus is going away, But on April 5th, he tells Bob Woodward of his views on the continuing danger of the virus. April 6th, another big day in our country's history. It's the day of deaths from COVID-19 became the leading cause of death.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And then on April 13th, Trump tells Woodward of the continuing dangers of the virus. Trump tells Woodward it's so easily transmissible, you wouldn't even believe it. And then 3 days later, announces his guidelines for opening up America again. Remember those? Remember those shitty PowerPoint slides they put out about reopening America?
I do.
There is a lot. It breaks more down. There's
it's
a lot.
Depressing. It's fucking depressing. But one thing I do want to say to you, if I can cut you off, because you have been hugging the mic for a long time.
A little bit. I've been going on.
Is there anything in there that's a surprise to you? And I know. Hold on. I know the media, mainstream media, fake news. I know that they are hyping this up as hashtag outrage, whatnot. But is there anything in there that you did not already know? That this president that we had ignored indicators that this thing was coming, downplayed the threat of it as soon as it came, despite all indicators around that this was something to be taken seriously. He will literally pivot on a pivot. Remember pivot from about 3 weeks ago?
Yep.
Pivoted. He will literally jump back and forth with whatever argument in that moment makes him come across more authoritative on a subject.
I just hope more people take note of the fact that, I mean, just looking at social distancing, had we started social distancing 1 week prior, it could have prevented 5,000 deaths. Had we started it 2 weeks prior, it could have prevented 85% of cases and 82% of deaths. And this is not even counting, like I was reading today, this woman got post-COVID glaucoma at 46 years old. So what the doctors are saying is she had COVID-19, she recovered from COVID-19, but the virus damaged her body to the point that she is now developing glaucoma. We saw the report the other week from the Big Ten doctors stating that 25 to 30% of the athletes that they are seeing that are contracting COVID are experiencing enlarged heart muscles, which is
those guys already had the enlarged heart muscles. There's no reason why an 18-year-old kid is 335 pounds. Fuck that. One of the things that I noticed, I actually had a doctor's appointment earlier this week, and what he said is that I've developed symptoms of being a total badass.
Well, very nice. Listen, I hope more people realize that
fucking depressing, Ron.
This administration has failed for over 3 years, and
they failed before. They have failed on everything. They have failed everything.
If we look at this, which is impacting so many people right now, the deaths, the suffering, the long-term medical conditions, the unemployment. We talked to Allie. I mean, how many empty businesses do you want now in New York City?
Right.
All of this could have been mitigated.
Right.
That's all I got.
Okay.
But on a plus note, Brian, we've got football coming back. Da-da-dun, da-da-dun. And that's right. Once again, we are doing our locks of the week. We got a game going on right now, so I'm not going to allow you to pick the Texans-Chiefs game. That's one that's off the table since kickoff was at like 7 o'clock.
Hold on, but I picked that before the game.
I don't trust you. Besides, you don't need that, Brian. You ran the table last year. So, Brian, give me your 2 locks of the week.
All right, this year, the first game, we're going to upstate New York, Buffalo. I'm liking the Bills, minus 6.5 over the Jets.
It's a good pick. I like that one as well.
I think the Jets are terrible this year. I think Buffalo's is a slowly improving team. Then, and this to me, if I could have a lock of the week, the Eagles laying 5.5 at the Washington football team. We do not reference them by their racist nickname. I think that team, especially with the sexual harassment lawsuits that are coming in with their embattled owner, Harvey Snyder. I think that the Eagles will be a lock. I say that Washington will be terrible this year.
And what's the line on the Eagles game again?
Eagles are -5.5.
All right, and you're taking that. All right, that's a decent pick. I am going my first pick. I'm going with the Niners, -7 against the Cardinals. Cardinals stunk last year. No reason to think they're any better. And the 49ers want to get back in it after losing the Super Bowl. And I got to go with the Rams, home underdogs to the Cowboys for some reason. Rams are getting 3 points at home against the Cowboys team that is always suspect, and a team that the Rams beat easily last year. So those are my two. So
all right. I wish you good luck.
Not over it.
Oh, well, we're not actually betting. What is our bet this year?
I don't know. Let's figure that out. But another good comment from Billy. Brian ran the table. You're not talking about his death pool picks, are you? We are most certainly not. That hurts a little bit. I know it hurts you.
It's a fucking pandemic. 180,000 Americans died. I couldn't pick one. Couldn't pick one.
Well, Brian, we are almost we're almost wrapped up here. But from what I understand, you have some corrections from last week.
Yes. Yes. One of the things that I love about our listeners is that they pay attention. Sometimes I think they pay more attention than we do. So, and I feel like we have been remiss in not putting a spotlight on our fans and and trying to make ourselves look better. Reading that timeline earlier about how Trump always puts himself in the best light, I realized no, we can't. So this week we are going to acknowledge that we are not perfect.
What mistakes did we make, Brian? I'm a little curious myself.
All right. Last week, Ron, you said that the president of Mexico was Felix Calderon. Unfortunately, you are incorrect. It's actually Andrés Manuel López Obrador.
My bad.
All right. This one, I made a mistake. Last week, I said that Julian Swinger had developed a widely used pictorial representation scheme for the mathematical expressions describing the behavior of subatomic particles, when actually it was not Julian Swinger, but it was Richard Feynman. So,
move, my friend.
Listen, I should have known better. I really should have known better.
You should.
And the other one that people point out, this one we received from multiple people. I don't know why I didn't pick it up in the mid-show. But when you were quoting lyrics from Old Dirty Bastards, Brooklyn Zoo, you said, I'm a one-man army ace-on. I've never been taken out. I keep MCs looking out. It's actually, I've never been tooken out. I keep MCs looking out.
Listen, in my defense, it is very difficult to understand what ODB is saying, although he does still have what I consider to be one of the all-time great lyrics in all music. Is I don't have a problem with you fucking me, but I do have a problem with you not fucking me.
Not fucking me. Yes. Big ups, ODB in heaven, Osiris, Big Baby Jesus.
Dirt McGirt.
Yes. I just got Charlie horse in my thigh.
All right. Well, if you would like to point out any corrections that we need for this week's episode, obviously you can go to ronandbrianpodcast.com, hit the contact us link, and you can send us that information. And of course, as always, you can become a patron by joining Patreon. I get those mixed up a lot. In the upper right-hand corner. And of course, our web store is there. We've got the hat, the stickers, the magnets, the face mask, which is very, very popular these days.
So popular.
Where you
we believe in social distancing. We believe in face masks when in public.
Just where you got
And also, if you want to spend $15 before shipping and handling,
yes,
we would like you to buy one of ours.
We always like that.
Please,
Brian,
come on.
Anything additional this week before we hop off for a few minutes and get prepared for that After Dark special for our Patreon subscribers?
Do we want to, speaking of celebrity deaths, do we want to talk about some of the people that passed away this week?
I mean, if you want to do it real quick, just...
Lou Brock, Diana Rigg, Kool and the Gang singer Ronald Bell, and somebody Ethan the Supreme. Bye.
See you next week, everybody. Thank you for joining us.